Money is a privilege, success is a privilege, you're entitled to nothing. All great achievements are just small wins compounded over time. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a mortgage broker. My teachers have always been great people, but they were just teachers. I've never caused harm to somebody by asking them for help. I gain more control over the parts of my life that I step back from. You're not the most important part of your own business. Get to the point where you've mobilized your money to make more money, right? Investors in real estate are going to be numbers-driven individuals, right? Emotion has no place in this, right? Do not win in your 20s. You're going to cripple yourself for the rest of your life.
Like, what was that point where you felt that this should be over? So we have Matthew Shantz, who is my coach, my mentor. I've known him for, it feels like a decade, but it's 2 years. I joined the brokerage and he became my coach, and I have learned so much. He has been in the industry for a good part of 1.5 decades now, and I have learned everything that I know about, mortgages from, him, because it's tough to be in the business, right? And today it's a slightly different video where I think we get a lot of immigrants on the channel, and we talk about their struggles, and a lot of them, have great lives in India or wherever they were coming from, and then they came here, they struggled, and then they made a life, right? But you are, born and brought up here.
Born and raised, yeah.
And we would love to hear about your struggles,
Yeah.
So my first question is, what do I need to know about your, childhood or your past to know who you are today?
So, I think it's interesting because I didn't really have a household that resembled what your traditional North American household looked like. Mm-hmm. I grew up with my grandparents, my parents, my uncles and aunts living with me. So I had a very mixed home, generational home. And I think that was a huge piece in setting my values as I grew up, right? My parents divorced when they were really young. So my mother had me when she was 20. By 28, she was a single mom with 2. Mm-hmm. And, we depended on family so much to sustain us during that time, and, it moves me a lot because, I think about it today and still I'll do anything for family today. My aunt, when she was 19, moved with my mother to help raise us, It just so happened that at the same time, my mother got divorced, she got laid off. And so we have a 19-year-old on a retail income supporting her nephews with her older divorced sister and trying to get going that way, So it's burned really into my head what the worst situation could look like, and we were fortunate enough that we had a strong family to support us, but, I still remember starting poor, right? And that helped a lot. And I think I've never tried to forget that bit. And, it's uncomfortable sometimes to think about, but it's really been that thing I carry with me as I go is, money is a privilege, success is a privilege. You're entitled to nothing, right? Because you started with nothing but your family, and that's it.
That's so amazing, right? Like, if you look at your current situation, and I think about this a lot. Do you really need pain to be where you are? So let's talk about
let's talk about pain.
We talk about pain, but let's talk about where you are now, right? So, like, you own multiple real estate. You have been investing for how long?
I started getting into real estate probably when I was about 15. I started really learning about it. It was actually, and we'll talk about this a bit, it was a pain coping mechanism for me to start learning about business and real estate, and it is how I kind of held myself together as a young adult. Over the past couple of years, I've really had more compounding success in it. I found a partner that worked really well with me, that we had joint ambitions and goals and getting on the same page. We've been able to acquire a good piece of real estate almost every year, for the past 6-7 years. There was a long window between when I started in real estate and I became serious about real estate, right? I was fortunate. I got my first property when I was in my early 20s, right? But it took me almost a decade to get to my second, right? And a lot of things happened over that time, right? And a lot of learning lessons happened over that time. But by the time I was proper adult, all the stupid I felt was behind me. We were able to make move after move after move, and not all of them were successful, right? But nothing was ever a true detriment. And our successes did start compounding, right?
Now you also have a business.
Now I've got a couple businesses that I own. I've got, some great pieces of real estate that I love. And, I've got people in my life that are my best investments. If I was anything, I'm a people investor. I give my time, my energy, my money to helping other people actualize as much as possible. And that's the best reward and the best investment. It pays off the best of anything, right?
So you come from, a time where you saw poverty.
Yeah.
And now you are a real estate investor. You are a great family person. You are, like a great real estate coach, mortgage coach. And then you own a couple of businesses which are doing very well. Now, do you really require pain in your life or in your childhood to reach here? Because every single person that I talk to, I see pain in their path.
Yeah, and I think you need pain. I'm not saying go out and find it, right?
Yeah.
And don't make it up. But I think you need struggle, and you need to have struggled in something, right? To really appreciate the little wins and all victories, right? All great achievements are just small wins compounded over time, right? And to be cognizant of these wins, you have to know what loss feels like. You have to know what hurt is. You have to know what failure is, you have to fall flat on your face a couple times to recognize your successes even. And then you play them upon each other and compound them. And over the course of years, you see great things happen. We as outsiders looking in assume overnight success in people. It's very easy for people to look at you, for example, over the past 2 years and be like, wow, Nav is so successful, right? He just came out of nowhere and achieved. How many times did you have to fall flat on your face to get to that win?
Very few people know about that failed business in the past.
Yeah, how many times, I think back, the one story you told me that stuck with me the most was your time in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
My partner's from Hong Kong. I know exactly what you're describing when you talk about your life there, right? And if that stands out to me as a piece that would drive somebody to not be back in that situation, right? I paid my dues to get to where I'm getting today, right? And we don't often talk about our pains openly because I think people, they're embarrassed by them, ashamed by them. They maybe don't recognize them as the powerful lessons that drive us to greatness, right? That they should be. Too many people coddle other people's pains and try to protect them from them. Face them head on, right? Let people overcome them. Let them do that piece for themselves, so that they can have the strength and the resilience and the tenacity and the endurance necessary in order to achieve something great in their life. I would say, if I had to say my top trait, I'm a tenacious person. I'm resilient, right? But without the hardships I overcame throughout my life, and there's been a few of them, I could easily be entitled. I could easily, my family in their past was quite wealthy and quite well-to-do. We owned factories and major meat production factory out of Kitchener that, some of you will be familiar with. And there were these wins, my My great-grandfather helped pioneer the railroad across Canada. There were things in the past, major successes in the past, that, could lead one to be an entitled ass if there wasn't pain involved to break it all down. I look at the past histories as inspiration. Look what my family had done. Look at what my relatives had done. Why can't I do that too, right? If they were able to, I'm genetically there. I'm mentally there. I've got all the name and all the things I need to do. You can build a power base for yourself by looking backwards. But it was the pain that motivates.
What was the most challenging time?
Yeah.
I'm sure there were.
There's a few.
But what would you say was your bottom?
Yeah. So, as many people who know me know, I'm an openly gay man, working in a highly conservative finance industry, right? This is difficult to begin with, but going back even further, I came out of a very religious family. They were strong evangelical Christians, which, if many of you aren't aware of, that sect of Christianity is the most conservative of them, and the most judgmental and the most unaccepting of people of my orientation. And so when I was 12 or 13, and it's hard to remember sometimes now, my last memory of life in the church, because I quickly left at that point, was this older girl that I respected, and she was my best friend, and she had to get up in front of the entire congregation and apologize for having a same-sex experience. And I learned really quickly at that point that I was not going to be accepted for who I was in the world I grew up in. And that led to a couple years of crisis, that's for sure, which at about 15 ended me up in the hospital having attempted suicide. We were fortunate. I got the call during a math class, I remember, to get to the office, and I had poisoned myself the night before, and for some reason woke up. And went to school like it was, nobody's business, right? Somehow my cat had gotten under my bed and pulled the note I'd left out, and my parents had found it, and I was pulled out of school, rushed to the hospital. Don't take a slow acting drug to try and end your life. There was concerns of liver damage, kidney damage, things of that nature, right? And so I definitely didn't go back to school the next day, that's for sure. And for about 6 months, I was seeing therapists and spending time working on myself and trying to come to terms with who I am. And
it's so hard at 15. You're 15.
Yeah.
You
don't know what's wrong yet. You have no idea what's wrong, because even at that point, I still didn't know who I was or why I was upset, right? Or what was going on. I didn't have the words or the context or the understanding for it. And, this is still in the 90s, early 2000 era. So, there was nothing in media today. There was no representation. There was no words. I had just learned the word lesbian a year beforehand. I grew up in a private school without exposure, right? And so I didn't have the language to express what I was feeling at the time, right? Now, the positive side about being out of school for a period of time and being forced to do a lot of self-reflection is that I was always a good reader, and I was always interested in self-education. And so, at this point, I picked up Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and that was the first business book in my life.
At 15?
At 15.
You understood that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were there. We were there.
I sat at my first read at the book, right?
Yeah. And then we read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that moved on to Think and Grow Rich. It moved on to a whole, a ton of books by Tim Robbins and others, right? And when we took that time to really develop our own interests and our own self better, right? And it would take years for this to realize into anything. but the foundations were laid early. You know, it was interesting. Everything good in my life happened after 15.
What was the turning point?
It was a turning point. You know, it was so shaking. My friends changed. You know, people I had grown up with left. Right? It's hard. It's hard to deal with that from the outside, right? And I don't blame any of the people that left during that time period, right? You know, but some people stayed and great people came into my life. And from then on, everything changed. I had words and was empowered, right? I had some direction and some goals and some understanding of what I was going to become, all right? Well, the path changed a few times over the years. You know,
When I look at it now, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, you know, don't come out.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't face that.
I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
And they just surround themselves with people who would otherwise be negative to their realities. And when you got out, yes, you lost a few people.
Yeah.
And you were sad.
Yeah.
And you were heartbroken. But then you actually, you know, once you opened up, you actually made room for people who actually
and that was the crazy bit, you know, because as hard as 15 was, 16 was amazing.
And
You know, my two best friends to this day, a guy named Jordan Cunningham and a woman named Fallon Bowman, they came into my life in force. You know, I'm godfather to my friend Jordan's kid. You know, my friend Fallon, she's over regularly and still visits 20 years later. I mean, and they're as close as a brother and a sister, right? And so the people that stay by you at that time, when you go through that hardship, they're going to be there for the rest of your life. Right? And so sometimes it is good to take all that negativity, all that burden, all that hardship that you may not have realized you were growing up or carrying, and throw it aside, right? Face your challenge head on, come through it the other side, and then begin creating the life you want, you know. And were there struggles? Absolutely. There were tons of struggles still to come, but nothing was ever so difficult again, right?
and to have that character at the age of 15,
it's you know,
it's a
if the mountain that you climb is early in life, you're gonna find yourself and you're gonna wisen up long before you need it, right? And sure, I still did stupid stuff. There was drinking, there was partying, there was all kinds of things in the early 20s, but that was sort of the culture and the life at the time, right? But I always felt like my base, my foundations, my core was good. And my morals were set young. And I was able to take that, and they haven't changed. The base morals that I carry, integrity, honesty, commitment to family, community, these things, they remain consistent for the next 25, oh geez, how old am I now? Almost 25 years since that moment, right?
Makes sense. So let's talk about real estate.
Yeah,
So 15 and 16, you read those books.
Oh, that was...
Then you ventured into, oh wow, there are assets, right?
There's I can be rich was the first thing that entered my head. I should be rich. Rich would be lovely. I want to be rich.
Why do you want to be rich? Like,
I don't know. At that time, I didn't know. I just thought it would be fun to have, right?
What is it that you actually wanted? Like in rich wise, like people want a Ferrari, people want a fancy house. You were 15, like so.
I think I saw money as always equated money to freedom. Money would provide me with freedom. Money would remove other people's power over me, right? If I had money, I could do what I want and no one would get in my way, right? It would give me the opportunity to live my life how I wanted to live it, right? And that became more clear as I got older, that money was the tool by which we buy our own freedom, right? we've talked about this privately many times, the different steps of freedoms that we acquire as our money increases. Freedom to food, food freedom, travel freedom, housing freedom, right? I wanted to be free, and money was the trick to doing it, right? I didn't know how much I needed. I didn't know how I was going to get it. I didn't know what it was going to be. I just knew that I needed to acquire assets.
So what did you do?
I decided I was going to be a lawyer. Because they're high paid, they make great money.
Now I know why Kamza is your friend.
Yeah, right? I was going to be a lawyer. I was going to be a criminal defense lawyer. I was going to get paid big dollars. I was going to have fun. I was going to be on TV. I was going to do all this stuff. Yeah, I didn't like to study. So that became a closed door pretty fast.
Okay.
Not that I was bad at school. I just didn't. You couldn't sit me down for too long at that point. I was going to be a sales guy. That's what we discovered later on.
How did you discover that? That's very hard.
Someone
Like you
has to
said
tell
that in
you.
one sentence.
Yeah.
But people sometimes take years and probably don't even then realize that they want to be a sales guy.
Yeah.
Realize pretty quickly. Like,
I've
why?
two benefits for going in my favor for this. My father was an entrepreneur, always was a sales guy. I saw him sell. We hadn't always been close, he and I, and over the past few years, and actually the greatest benefit of the past decade has been connecting with him. And business became the language that he and I could speak to each other. We couldn't talk about politics. We couldn't talk about religion. We couldn't talk about family even in some regards, right? But we could talk about business. And we could talk about and share that together. Now almost half my business ventures involve my father. That was such a win on my side because I don't even care about businesses themselves as much as I care about the relationship that I have with him and his kids and that side of the family, right? And that's the key piece of it. So business became the language I could speak with people, and then I had the benefit of an overly honest mother, and I was like, okay, I'll take anthropology. I could go be a lawyer from social sciences, whatever, right? No, I'm not studious enough. I'm not going to be a lawyer. I can't get into law school. Maybe I'll go be a professor. All these big titles with great incomes, right? That require a lot more work. The reminder that, Matt, you're not really super studious either, and I don't think you're going to be happy at doing this. She turns around. I start pursuing archaeology because, I'm going to go do the Indiana Jones thing. I'm going to go have a life of adventure. She turned to me and she's like, you're never going to be on a dig site chasing Nazis, finding lost treasure. That's not real. That's not your life. It's like, I'm a mortgage agent, or at that time she was an agent, and she's like, I'm a mortgage agent. Why don't you follow real estate? Why don't you look at what's already in front of you? Why don't you try this first, right? And I pushed back a little bit, but I was by my early 20s was already working in the office a bit, doing file completion work and compliance work for other agents, and I was already sort of half 1 foot in. I've been working with realtors already, setting their open houses, spending time with them on the weekends, learning their properties. I was already doing the things that would have made that the correct career.
But why didn't you want that?
Because it didn't sound fun. Mortgage agent.
Lawyer, professor.
Yeah, what my mom does, right? And it had taken her a while. As I became an adult, she had the freedom to move from a retail job that had sustained us to mortgage agent, which was her passion was real estate. And I shared that over time. But, as we became adults, I saw her transition to it, and real estate became the tool by which my family regained some sense of control and wealth and some money, right? So I'd seen this happen, but it seemed boring. Like, nobody wants to be a mortgage agent, really. That's not, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a mortgage broker. Like,
Some people do.
I would love to meet them when that's their first job that they woke up and thought, but it was better than call center, where I didn't work for sure. I struggled through. You know, I licensed as a mortgage professional in 2009. I did my course in 2008. My timing's always been terrible. And right before that, around 2006, I was doing outbound sales at a call center, which was terrible, you know. And so I have respect for people and that's where I was starting to really get my sales chops, though, until I got into it with my boss. And she called me aside and she's like, "Matt, you're never actually going to achieve anything in life. You're terrible at this." And so I respected her opinion. She was right. I hated being at a desk, behind the desk, working at this call center, and I was never going to achieve anything in that life. You know, so I quit on the spot. I told her what I thought of her, what I thought of her hair and her clothes and her face. And made sure that I burned every bridge I could, because there was no way I was going back to that job or getting a reference for that job or wanted to be associated with that job again. So, you know, and I made sure that opportunity was good and dead. And then I called a good friend of mine at the time, and I'm like, "Kate, let's go down to City Hall." Because it was 2006 and there was an election happening. And I'm like, this overachiever, let's say, that I'm working for, thought I wasn't going to do anything in life. So let's go do something fun. And I ran for mayor of London.
What?
Yeah. You know,
How old were you?
21.
Got to be kidding.
Yeah.
Did you get any votes?
530 something.
Nice.
But in that moment, I was the youngest person to ever run for an executive position in municipal politics in Canada. And 530 people thought I had something good to say.
Wow.
Which I don't know that many people at that age. I was lucky if I knew 20 people, right? But, you know, it was interesting because I got to stand on stage with the current finance minister of Canada at the time and tell him what I thought of him. And most people at 21 don't have an opinion, and definitely nobody at 21 should have an opinion, let's be honest. But what I really learned at that time was I had a pair of balls. And I wasn't really afraid of things. And, you know, my first public speaking event in my life was with an incumbent mayor and finance minister and a couple other people on stage in the middle of an election, which I had no point should I have been in there. But it was a moment of, you know, screw you. You told me I wasn't going to achieve anything in life, so I'm going to prove you wrong. All right. By the end of that, I realized that I was probably going to be unhireable by most people. And, you know, everybody who worked with my mother had already been nicknaming me the mayor. So I'm like, you know what, at least they accept me. So I'm going to go work with them.
Makes sense.
You know?
Makes sense.
So it was sort of important to get to work after that. You know, I tried to come live in Toronto for 6 months. That didn't work. So I moved back home, you know, and took on the mortgage agent job. And, you know, at least this is where we started.
And what was, you know, like it was way different the way.
Yeah, they didn't have Facebook yet. So this is pre-Facebook, just for those of you that want to get dated.
Yeah. So, you know, like that was a hard job. You know, I had this podcast with Tracy and we talked about, you know, billboards and stuff like that. And, you know, if you go back, you know, it's even worse. Was there a time when you felt that this is not wrong?
Oh, many times. All the time. Constantly. I didn't know what I was doing there. You know, I was lost. Even though I had kind of grown up in the business, even though I'd seen this, even though I had easily the best mentors people could ask for, you know, I was fortunate back in the day. The brokerage I started with was small. And so I was, you know, my mom was kind of helping with the administration and running it a bit. So I got to start off in their head office with guys that I had no reason I should have been at the same table with them, right? They've been in this business 20, 30 years. They were old dogs, right? They were the founders of this industry. And I'm sitting there, this, you know, bleach blonde haired, stupid little skinny loudmouth, right? But I'm listening, right? And you know, I was not successful early. It took me a long time to find my feet, right? We didn't have social media, didn't have smartphones really, right? Nobody was going to take financial advice from me. I mean, I'm 21 years old, right? I haven't lived my life yet. I don't know anything. I'm 23 probably by this point, but I had no right to tell people what to do yet. So I had to develop my confidence, and it took time. Over the course of the next few years, though, we started to get our feet under us. I was never awesome in the early days of my career. I look at people like Tracy who made it through those early days and were amazingly successful. And like, you must have had some greater purpose that I was missing yet, right? And that was it. I didn't have that why yet, and Tracy was talking to you about having a why, and it's one of the first questions now I ask mortgage agents when they come into this business is why.
What is your why?
So my why actually changed a lot when I came back into this. I took a hiatus for a few years. My why is I love the business. I love the people in it. I love this industry, but I want to leave it better than I found it. I do this because I want to leave the business in a better condition than I came into it. So why do I coach? Why do I mentor? Why do I train? Right?
And I've seen that a few times on you said that a few times. I didn't know that was your why.
That's my why. That's what wakes me up every day is, this industry I love. Right. And I do love it. It's been my entire adult life in some way, shape, or form. And even when I was taking a hiatus, it's never gone. Right. I love it, and I think it can be better.
And why do you think, like, what was that point where you felt that this should be your why?
Yeah. Well, it's difficult, right? It's hard. It's hard to really put a finger on when these things happen. But I really became firm of this only a couple of years ago. I came back into the business after being out of it for both 4 years, and started working with Tracy, and that was a huge win on my part. Just, I remember I was working at a lender at the time, so I never really left the business, right? I was just doing a different side of it, and my position was no longer required. And so I remember Tracy was one of my best clients at the time, and we had been building a relationship. And the first person I called before I called my mother, before I called in my mentors, whatnot, I called Tracy for some weird reason. I'm like, Velco, I don't have anything to do come tomorrow. My job isn't here. I've got EI, I've got a severance. Can I come do something with you? Don't know what it is yet, but I'd like to do something with you. You inspire me, right? Then she said yes. And she'd already been working with me, so I knew her, and we had done business before. And she was my best account at the lender side. So we had a relationship, and we knew each other well enough at that point that she said yes. And all of a sudden, I started working with someone who inspired me, right? Who pushed me to think about the whys, and to actually think with purpose and with reason, and to now put direction to my actions and intention to my actions, right? And as we started setting up the brokerage, as we started getting those foundations in places, it started to become something. I really discovered my why, and that was that I was going to lead this industry better than I came into it.
How important is coaches and
my teachers have always been great people, but they were just teachers, right? I think if you really want to accomplish and achieve in life, you get yourself a mentor. You get someone who you can emulate their behaviors, their mindsets, their visions, right? A mentor is someone that you emulate and you chase after. A coach is someone who's going to hold you accountable while you do it.
Yeah.
Right. And I was never much of a sports guy. I mean, like, I got the body for it, that's for sure. But I never grew up with the understanding of why coaching was so important until I got one. And I had mentors since I was young. I had realtors, I had mortgage agents, I had business people that were mentoring me, and I knew the power of leveraging the relationships and the knowledge and the understanding. But it wasn't until I had someone over my shoulder holding me accountable the decisions I was making, the choices I had, and I was fortunate enough to work with this person, like Suzanne's my coach, right? Tracy's partner. And when she came into the picture and really put direction to my activity, right? Did I see monumental success quickly, right? So, my greatest successes are new. My greatest wins are relatively new in the grand scheme of things. My achievements that in my life that I feel have all happened in the past 5 years, really. There have been things along the way that have led to it happening, but the compounding effect has been so recent.
You were talking this, right?
Yeah.
It's not overnight.
No.
Right? There's so much work and blood, sweat, and tears, and blood.
Yeah. Blood.
Again,
And blood,
right?
yeah.
And that's what got you to,
Yeah.
like...
And then when it happened, it happened. I wish I could snap my fingers. It'd be more impactful at that. But when it happened, right? And it was recent. It was within the past 4 years that things really took shape. And it took someone who I could look up to, who had purpose behind their activity. Because, you need to live for something more than yourself. You need to have something greater than yourself, your own wants, your own desires, right? You need an example of somebody like that to push you, right? And then it took somebody to get their hands dirty and want to see me win. And have the love and the courage and the confidence to have hard conversations with you. Because her, she's going to have a hard conversation right head on with you, right? To trust you to take the steps necessary that they help you lay out to find success.
Like if someone is lost.
Yeah.
We were lost one time, right?
Oh, yeah.
If someone is lost today,
Yeah.
someone is watching and they're lost, how do they find a mentor? How do they even begin?
Yeah.
Where do they start?
Starts with humility first, because you need to realize that the way out of a rut is to get a mentor, right? The way out of a hardship is to find someone that's walked the path first, right? I use a lot of analogy. I use a lot of story. And when I talk, this, we all joke about it, right? But if you go hiking and you find yourself in a swamp, right, and there's no path before you and your feet are sinking into the mud, you can't expect to get out of it alone. You need somebody who's walked a step ahead of you to reach back and grab your hand and pull you through, right? The neat thing about mentors is they were all mentored. No one who mentors today wasn't mentored. And a mentor mentors others because someone mentored them first. And they feel an emotional connection, a need, an imperative to mentor other people, right? And so what you need to do is first humble yourself to realize that I need one, and then go and have the courage to ask for one, right? And the right people will always say yes, right? And you may get rejected a few times, right? But the right person who's meant to share the experience and help you grow, they'll say yes.
And how do
They'll
you
see something.
How do you find that right person?
Know yourself a little bit. Know what you want to be a little bit. Take a small risk. Call, email, get in front of them. To get a mentor to coach, you need to provide value to them. To get a mentor to keep you, you need to show desire to grow, right? It's not a they give. It is a two-way street, right? If you're willing to show growth and to show development and to show that you're walking the path forward, then a mentor will continue to help and assist. The moment you stop, of course, they're not going to be there until you come back to them. A coach, you engage them and you pay for them, right? Coaches should always cost you something, whether it's energy, time, money, whatever, right? A coach is a transaction, right? You must buy them. A mentor, you'll seek them out because of an emotional need, okay? And they'll be there for an emotional reason. I don't mentor everyone I coach.
Makes sense.
I coach as a job. I mentor those I care about.
Yeah, you choose to.
I choose who I'm going to invest emotionally into, right? And you're reaching that point now where you're starting to look at people who you're mentoring, right? And it's not everyone you teach is who you mentor, right? And you'll find people that will stand up and it's like, it's you. You're the one I see.
And now I really feel is a lot easier because you do find people on social media who inspire you. And yes, they may not have the time, but you should gather the courage to ask, because even if they say no, the next person might say yes.
Exactly.
Or they might connect you to another person that they think would be a better fit for that person. And it's just about asking at one time.
And that's the thing too. And I think you nailed a piece there is, if you're not able to mentor me, do you know someone who could?
Yeah.
And if you don't ask, the answer is always no. If I don't reach out, if I don't connect with somebody, if I don't call them or email them or try to get in front of them, the answer is always going to be no. Sure. But if I reach out and ask, there's a possibility of a yes. And if it's a no, do you know someone else who could? Right? Never be afraid to ask. Right? I've never caused harm to somebody by asking them for help. Right? No one's ever caused harm to another person asking them for assistance. Right? We need to stop being so proud that we don't reach out for help from others, right? And getting a good mentor is the key to life. I always have a mentor. Always. I may not always have a coach, but I've always got someone who's walked the path before me that I'm following.
Sense.
Right? And I will until I'm dead. For the rest of my life, there'll always be someone I'm following.
Do you think ego has a role to play in not finding mentors? One thing is that, you are so proud of yourself, or you're so full of yourself, I would say, that you just can't imagine someone knowing more than you. And that's something that only can be broken from within.
Absolutely.
Right? But there are certain times where, you're just too egoist.
Yeah. I think
you're like, if I need a mentor, I don't think he's the right person, right?
Yeah. If I could encourage people to develop one trait in life, it'd be humility. No one was ever punished for being too humble, right? Humility opens so many doors, right? Because it gets us out of the way, right? A humble heart, humble mind is the first step to success in my mind, because now I don't know anything. I'm not the expert, and I'm never going to be the smartest person in the room, but I'm definitely going to be in a position where, if I ask them, I'll have the ability to ask them openly, right? You're never the smartest person in the room. You're never going to be the true expert, right? There's always someone else out there, right? So be humble, right? And even if you are the smartest person in the room, don't announce it.
And probably find another room where you're not.
Exactly. Go find a different room.
I always feel, when I joined Wealth Genius, right? So, Wealth Genius, for those of you who don't know, it's a mastermind for real estate. So I thought that I bought a few properties, one multifamily, whatever, right? So I was like, wow, and people started looking me on YouTube, as someone who has done a lot. Yeah. And then I joined Wealth Genius, and I could not speak there because the lowest that anyone had in terms of doors was 50. And I'm like, whoa.
Oh man.
Whatever I know,
Yeah.
they know 10 times more.
Yeah.
Because they have been through things that I cannot even imagine.
Yeah.
And that's where I became for the lack of a better word, dumbest in the room.
Yeah.
And no longer the smartest in the room. And now I'm getting to a point where I can actually talk. And now and probably one day I'll get to a point where
teach.
I can teach, and then I need another room.
Yep, exactly.
And like you said, you always get into rooms and make yourself into uncomfortable situations as long as you know that,
Exactly.
you're growing. And
the moment I'm the smartest kid in the room, I got to go find a new room. Right. And it's hard because we like the comfort that comes from being the big fish in a small pond, right? There is something that comes from, knowing I'm the best, knowing I'm the smartest, knowing I know the most, knowing I've got the answer, right? But we don't grow that way, right? And so it takes a humble heart to realize that I have to go get that next room.
Talk me through your business life. Right?
Oh,
this is mortgage life,
yeah.
right? So, there's a life, outside of mortgages as well. Talk me through that. How did you get into that? And what is it?
So, I like being busy, and I'm not really artistic, and I don't have good interests, and I don't have hobbies, right? So I had to figure out what the heck am I going to fill my time with when I'm not working, right? And businesses became a great way to do that. And, other activities, people are like, well, aren't you so busy? I'm like, well, you watch TV, and I will go build a new company. I can still have the TV on in the background. That's fine. It's like I'm not going to vegetate, right? I don't have artistic ability. I'm not going to sit there and paint, right? But what I can do is I can conceptualize a solution to a problem. And building a business is essentially seeing a problem and trying to create a solution around it, right? And so, today we've got a marketing company, we've got an agricultural company, we've got my mortgage company. I'm building out a incubator project, as you know, right, to help young business people get started and have resources available to them. We are constantly looking at things we can do. We've got a logistics company that we've just started working alongside. My brothers have landscaping, and all my family is entrepreneurial. So, my businesses is a very blanket term sometimes because we each bring what we're best at to the table. So amongst my siblings and I, we probably now have 8 or 9 businesses running, where I may bring my financial and managerial mind to the table, help with the organizational of it, right? They might be the one to do the actual landscaping. I'll be honest, I'm not doing that, but is there value I can bring to them, right? And one of the nice things of having the two families, right, is that I've got a whole other set of family on the other side. I've got 5 younger siblings through my father's side alone, 6 when I include my full brother, right? And each of them is doing something interesting, right? And that whole have put family as a value. That whole our language to communicate with each other, that whole experience has been business. That's how I bond with them. I'm 20 years older than my youngest sibling. The only way she and I can bond is through business. She's learning how to administrate a company. This is something I can work with her on, right? I bond with my younger brothers through their business activities, right? It became the language that I spoke with the people in my family. So even as my father and I connected through it, it became the tool with I could connect with others, right? I don't need them all to be super successful, but the act of doing it is super satisfying.
A lot of people actually get into that mindset, and I was like that. In fact, to date, I'm somewhat like that, where I want to keep everything to myself, in the sense that if I own the whole business, I first keep control of the business, and I know how it's run, and I understand it, and I do it my way. And 2, I keep all the gains from it. I think you collaborate a lot more.
Yeah, I collaborate's probably my new middle name.
Okay.
And it ties back to the humility piece, right? The collaboration can only take place in an environment in which humility is present, right? And it's hard. Fostering humility it's work, right? Suzanne taught me not long ago that I gain more control over the parts of my life that I step back from. And if I utilize soft power over my life instead of hard power. So the concept of soft power.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, soft power and hard power became a real study point for me over the past couple of years. And so soft power is my influence to my presence, directing actions. Hard power is me forcing actions to happen, right? Nobody likes being hard powered in your life. You would rather do what I convince you to do, not what I tell you to do, right? And so I've really stepped back in a lot of regards and tried to become hands-off in a lot of regards and influence the direction people take instead of forcing them into my direction. And what I discovered is that other people are pretty smart. Other people are pretty capable. Other people are pretty awesome, right? And I'll give you some credit here. I kind of learned this through our relationship, right? Stepping back and letting you build your business the way you want it to, within some boundaries, right? Did you ever feel like I was oppressing you or pushing, and yet your business ended up compliant and honest and good integrity, and we share very similar viewpoints and very similar foundations. And I laugh, but all my agents' businesses are just a reflection of my business, right? I never told you how to do it and made you do it in a certain way, but I definitely influenced in the direction that I saw, right? And learning to do that, it takes so much patience because there are many times I want to jump up and just do it, right? Oh my goodness. There are so many times I just want to solve the problem because I know how to do it, but it's not going to make the other part better. It's not going to make the other person better.
And it's not sustained.
And it's not sustainable. I'll be gone someday, right? I won't be doing this forever. I'll step out at some point. My roles might change. My job might change. Things might happen. I might step out down the stairs and get hit by a bus, but the businesses that I've influenced will continue without me. And it's a weird moment to get to that point that you're not the most important part of your own business, right? But it wouldn't have gotten there without you. It wouldn't have gotten off the ground without you, right? Yeah, that's the humility piece. It's really weird. In the long run, I fought for a long time against utilizing soft power, right? I was a control freak for years. I was pretty sure I knew how to do everything better than everyone else, for a long time. I have to always apologize, to my first group of agents. They know why I'm sorry.
I'm not one of them.
Yeah. They know why I'm sorry. And, funny enough, though, most of them are still here. Most of them are still here. Most of them are coaching now. Right, in some way, shape, or form. But they had enough room in their heart for my bad and to forgive it, right? And I had to learn over the past few years how to lead without controlling. Oh, is it hard? And I still screw up periodically. I still have moments where I'm like, oh, just do it my way, but there's a freedom that comes after you get there. And, I'll be working on that for still a few years, right? To really master that. But this group of agents that I work with today, this younger batch, I call y'all, your business is formed well without me telling you what to do, but showing you how.
No.
And then this is the same thing I take to my siblings, same thing I take to my other endeavors. I don't have to do everything, so it allows me to do more.
Right? No, for sure. I also wanted to touch upon value of a good partner, because I have a great partner. I know you have a great partner in Richard. So I do feel that there's a lot of energy that goes off that you could otherwise put in your business.
Absolutely.
In maintaining a relationship, with your spouse.
My spouse allows me to do what I do. If I didn't have a stable, level-headed, security-driven, strong partner, I would not have the freedom to be an entrepreneur. My house had to be taken care of first, right? Your house always has to be taken care of first. If your home's in disarray, your business is doomed, right? And so having a partner who's on the same page as you is important, who trusts you is important, and trust is not given, it's earned, right? I had to prove that I could be sustainable in my business so that I could have the right to have my business. Now, if I say, let's go do something stupid, he's all on board, right? Because stupid's paid off, crazy's paid off, right? My partner provides a level of security that I know my house is going to be paid for, and that I've got a roof over my head and they've got a stable job. My partner's an engineer. You couldn't get more boring, black and white than a structural engineer, okay? It's math. They sit there, they do their work. They're not super exciting people, right? I know there's stability in my life, right? That gives me the freedom to go do something fun, right? I had to make a promise, when I started off is, listen, I know this year I'm not going to make any money. I know this year it's going to be zero, and it's going to suck, and you're going to hate me every minute of this because I'm going to be taking, right? Trust me, it's only the first year, right? The second year was okay. The second year, I pulled my weight well enough. I said, by the end of this year, I'll make your take home because we need to be equal. I have to at least do your take home if I'm going to be an entrepreneur, right? We'll deal with the taxes and that crap later. That's the joy of owning the business, right? And I did it. And then I said, the next year, I'm going to do your gross. I'm going to beat your gross. And, no offense, I clobbered it. Right. And that was the moment we realized that I had permission to build. I had permission to make decisions that would impact both of our lives because I had proven and maintained the sustainability that, build your businesses, do your crazy, take that risk, you'll make money.
What's the top one or two things that you felt allowed you to do that? Because I see a lot of people who get really crazy, mortgages, and we are in the business, so we know that. And then it's very difficult to protect your house. Yeah. So in your, if you look back at your life at that time when you were not making any money in year one, what are those 2 or 3 major things that you feel helped you get there?
I overtrade a lot, right? We based our finances on his earnings only. Okay. Everything involved what he brought home. And that was it. So was our home humble? Yeah, you bet. Were our expenses low? Oh yeah, you bet. We made sure that I was not necessary to maintain our lifestyle, right? We don't own a car. Still don't own a car. I could buy almost whatever car I wanted today. I don't see a point, right? We use car shares in Toronto. We're lucky, right? We spend $50 a day, $30 a day, right? Gas, insurance included, drive a crappy little Hyundai around, but who cares, right? I'm not showing off to anybody, and I don't have to impress anybody with the vehicle I arrive in, right? If I need to, I'm going to get an Uber Black and we'll show up in an SUV, right? Or if I feel like it, we've done that a few times for things, right? My driving around car doesn't exist. I'll take transit if I have to. I'll walk if I have to, right? That was a way we kept our expenses low. That's a good $1,200 back in my pocket every month, right? We kept our home low, and we didn't upgrade, and we didn't change much, and we didn't refinance. And this was a key piece. We've never drawn from our home. There's a line of credit on, there's a HELOC on, and that's helped us do some things periodically, but I've never locked in a draw off my home. So we've always been paying it down. Okay. We have a small mortgage, reasonable, right? Our expenses were always kept low so that we could do the things we wanted to do, invest the ways we want to invest. My money became our play money, became our lavish lifestyle money, became our investments, became all these other things, right? And the more we wanted, the more I have to earn. And I'm a business owner. I can control that. I do sales. I can control that, right? If we want better, I'll go make more money this year, right? But making sure my survival was inexpensive and that only one of us was necessary to keep that was key, right? We didn't buy our first rental property together until we knew that I was making enough that I was covering the rental and our home was safe.
Makes
sense. Which that first property was a total flop, so my bad. But, we broke even and that was so in. But my expenses have to be low. Now today, we talk about GDS, TDS, gross debt service and total debt servicing, right? On stuff. If I look at my home, it makes up 3 and 7% GDS and TDS. It's
insignificant.
Right? It's insignificant.
Yeah.
It's insignificant. And so don't make yourself house poor. Live humbly, invest for the long run, call it my assets down the road, pay for a lavish lifestyle later.
And I see a lot of people don't have any patience at all. Be it mortgage agents, be it investors, be it, a lot of people come to me and say that, I want to buy an investment property because I want to, earn passive income. And I'm like,
don't buy an investment property.
So, and I'm like, if you want to make money off real estate, like in 2 years, you need to be in the business of real estate.
You have to be a realtor.
You have to be an investor. Investor comes after you have earned money, you preserve your wealth, and you, over time, generate passive income. And I think that's where people get wrong. Do you also have...
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think one of the biggest mistakes in this world is we watch too many people succeed without seeing how they succeeded there. And we see the end result, and we believe that that's all that had to happen, right? I'm a firm believer in cash flow quadrants. So one of Kiyosaki's books, right? Cash flow quadrants. And it talks about moving from employee to self-employed to business owner to investor, right? And there is a path to follow to becoming these things. And I look at investors as people where the majority of your income is coming from a source that doesn't require you, right? That you've sent your money out and now my money makes money, right? That's a very hard place to get to, right? Being a business owner is creating a system and a structure that will survive not based on you, is independent, moves on its own, builds money, right? Self-employed is great, no boss. You now have freedom. You've got better tax benefits, right? There's better ways to build wealth, right? Being an employee is rough from a financial sense. So there's a path, I feel, to becoming an investor. Most people call themselves investors long before they're ever an investor, right? Most people are like, oh, I own a rental property. I'm an investor. No, you're not. You're a landlord. You've got debt. You just took on more trouble than it's worth, Being an investor really is a mindset place, right? Where you're considering the value of your dollars and where they're going and what they're returning, right? Kevin O'Leary, who I'm not a huge fan of, but he had one line that really stuck with me, and he pictures his dollars as soldiers, and their job is to go out there and fight for him. And they better bring back casualties.
Makes sense.
You know, and I've always looked at it, and that's the key piece, is to get to the point where you've mobilized your money to make more money, right? If I bought an investment property and I was not in a position where it was easy to buy that, if I had to dig into my own personal life and hamper my own personal life to buy that investment property, I'm buying it too soon, right?
But what about FOMO?
What's FOMO?
Fear of missing out.
Yeah, what's that?
So
Why?
so many people
Why?
are buying. I should also buy
An
that.
investor has no FOMO.
Yeah.
An investor has moved past FOMO, right? An investor is a numbers person, looking purely at the takeout, the returns, right? If you're driven by emotions, you got to mature more before you're ready to be an investor, right? You're still learning, right? If you bought a property based on emotion, you're not an investor, you're a consumer, right? The moment you know you're ready to buy a property is when you lose a bid and you're cool. When you like, I need to own that, someone else overpays for it and you're great walking away because there's another opportunity around the corner, right? Investors don't love real estate. Investors aren't emotionally attached to their real estate. Investors don't need this deal, but they'd like it, right? I'd love to be a part of it, but if I overpay for it, then that's not happening, right? You know, investors in real estate are going to be numbers-driven individuals, right? Emotion has no place in this, right? I might fall in love with my home someday when I find my home, right? Today I live in properties that will become investment properties down the road, you know, and so great, you know, I might make them my own a little bit, but I don't love them, right? Why should you love your assets, right? Love having the assets.
I think that's delayed gratification.
It is.
You're talking about, right?
It
So,
is.
like, how important has that been in your life, and how can you give me an instance where it actually paid off?
Well, I would kind of think most of my life has been a thing of delaying gratification in some way, shape, or form, or not, and getting burned by it, right? And you know, this is where the growing up, starting poor really helps. Is I don't need a lot to be okay, right? Do I have food? Do I have some clothing? Do I have a shelter? Great. That's all I need. Do I have friends and family? Awesome. I'm satisfied. No car, no house, no big screen TV, no nothing, no piece of jewelry, no trinket, no nothing is going to give me more satisfaction than I already have today. It's just fun. The other stuff's fun, right? You know, I'm always car shopping, right? And I'm always looking at what I want. And you know, my go-to that I keep eyeballing is a Porsche Panamera, which is the sedan type, and I love it. And I'm like, if you know, that's my grown-up vehicle, right? And I keep looking at that $130,000 price tag attached to it. I'm like, that's a down payment on an investment property. And I keep just hitting that point again because it's like, that car might give me satisfaction today, but I can't leave it to anybody 10 years, 20, 30 years from now, right? It's not going to be anything down the
But
road.
where do you stop? There has to be a point where you say that now I'll get that fancy house.
Yep.
Now, like, do you put a number?
I'm 39 years old, right? I just turned 39. We'll revisit that at 45. We'll revisit it at 50. I'm still in the growth stage of life. I still have a lot more ahead of me than behind me. I don't need to get comfortable and settle down yet. I don't need to be satisfied yet, right? I still have more years to grow. And so until such a point, and we'll talk about it at 45, we'll look at it at 50. I might say, you know what, I'm done. I've got enough. I'm happy. I'm satisfied. I'm there, right? And I'm already starting to reach that point where my asset holdings are good. You know, I don't need to add another piece of real estate. I don't need to buy another thing, right? I don't need another business. It's cool if I find one that I like. It's good if I find one that I like, you know, but you know, I would be satisfied if all that I have today is what I have. Right?
Makes sense.
But I'm still young, so there's still a little bit more.
No, I'm
You know.
So, Matt,
Yeah.
this section I call the mindset matrix,
Okay.
where I'm trying to get into your mind,
Yeah. Sorry.
and try to understand,
Yeah.
what goes on.
Yeah.
So I'll be asking you some easy questions.
Okay.
There's some difficult questions. 4 questions only. So the first one is, what's the best price that you've ever gotten from home?
I'll give this one to my mom. Once upon a time, she slapped me up the back of the head and said, "Don't be stupid." You know, and I mean, she meant it as a in this moment thing. But I really think about that a lot, and I'm like, you know, there's no excuse for me to make dumb decisions. There's no excuse for me to be stupid in this moment. You know, I don't need to let my emotions take over and drive me. You know, I interpret it as stop, think, be thoughtful before you do things, right? Don't act on impulse, right? You're going to not just burn yourself, but someone else, right? So, you know, what was a slap over the head in a word, you know, it turned out to be a little bit deeper, I think.
Makes sense. And you had that maturity very young.
Young enough to recognize what.
What were you doing 10 years from now? Like, you're 29.
Okay. So 10 years ago, what was I doing at 29? It's a great question. Just drinking too much. 10 years ago.
So that's 2030.
Yeah.
2030.
Yeah, I was just relocating back to Toronto. I had tried to do it when I was really young. That fell on its face. I didn't do it right. I didn't move with money in my pocket. I didn't move with a job. I didn't take the steps necessary to achieve the life I wanted. At this point, I was deciding I wanted to come back to Toronto. I was being raised in London. London's a short town. I don't like short cities. I like tall buildings. I like to have to be forced to look up. And so I went and I got a job in sales. I got out of being business for self for a bit. I started working in sales for electronics. It's actually pretty solid at it. I won out against about 10 other holiday hires for a full-time or for a part-time position. I asked my manager about 3 or 4 months later, hey, could I relocate to a Toronto office? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay, what do I have to do to relocate to a Toronto office? He's like, give me 3 months of you being my top sales guy. Okay. I don't know how I'm going to do this. You got some great salespeople on the floor, but we pushed so hard for 3 months. I hustled like it was nobody's business, right? I took an inbound retail sales and went outbound shopping with it, and built a client list and just hustled my ass off. And I got 3 months in top position in sales there. So he's like, okay, you can move to Toronto. Where are you going to move? And I'm like, what's the biggest store? And they're like, well, it's down at Yonge and Dundas Square. I'm like, that's where I want to go. He's like, okay, well, you got to go meet with the manager and see if he'll take you. So I went and I printed off my sales reports and I went and I'm like, you know, I was top sales guy in the store. He's like, I'd make you third here. I'm like, well, do you have a space for a number 3 then? He's like, no, but you can come a number 2. I'm like, okay. So I came, he gave me a chance. I got to do another holiday there, worked my butt off, you know, was able to take a number 2 position, so he kept me, right? And worked there for a couple of years. But the job let me move to where I wanted to move and start setting up the life I wanted to start.
But did you ever imagine the life that you have now back then?
I knew this is where I was going.
Okay.
I knew if I made the move to come to Toronto, that this is where I could end up. I knew that if I stayed somewhere where I felt small, that I would stay small. But if I moved somewhere that challenged me and pushed me and made me very uncomfortable very fast, because I'm an introvert by nature. I don't like big cities by nature. I don't like loud noises and hustle and bustle. It's not my natural environment. But, you know, I don't like being poor. I don't like, you know, my money not going very far, right? But I had to go somewhere that was expensive, that was hard, that was loud, that was uncomfortable, and break me out of my shell so that I could exceed hell to my next level.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. The reason why I ask is that a lot of people underestimate the things that they can do in 10 years. And when you look back 10 years, like if I look back to 2013, I was what, I was just straight out of, my business school. I wanted to be the youngest director, probably the lowest in my company. And yeah, I had never imagined me owning a business back then. And 10 years down the line, I've failed businesses. I became the youngest director in my company, and, everything happened.
10 years is an incredible amount of time that you can achieve so much in.
Yeah.
The time from 29 to 39 has been such an incredible adventure. All my wins are these 10 years. All my great wins have been in this last 10 years. The next 10 are going to be even better.
Yeah. And now that
Yeah.
the last 10 years, that the next 10 years,
no one should succeed in their 20s. I'm gonna say this really crystal clear. Do not win in your 20s. You're gonna cripple yourself for the rest of your life. Fall flat on your face. Fall hard. Lose everything in your 20s. Get beaten up in your 20s. Right? Come into your 30s with maturity and purpose and master yourself. Right? And in your 30s, build the foundation. And I've always looked at this. 30s was my years to build my foundation, to get really good at my core, right? To practice the things I learned in my 20s so that my 40s are going to just rock, right? That's where my success lives. My true successes are going to be in the 40s.
Yeah. If you were to make one rule, and you are the president of the world, and you have one day to pass one bill, what would that one?
Cause no harm. That's easy. Cause no harm. Don't do anything to hurt another person. That's one thing you can choose to never do. I can make a conscious choice every day with every action, with everything I do to hurt nobody. Cause no harm. Ever.
Makes sense.
There's no excuse. There's no reason to.
Yeah. If you were to take out anyone, that's my last question. So if you were to take out anyone on lunch or dinner, and you could choose anyone dead or alive, who would that person be and why?
Yeah, Winston Churchill.
Oh wow! Right.
Well, I have a different relationship with him than your audience would. That's for sure.
Okay.
I definitely look at him as the man that held a country together in the darkest moments when surrender and giving up would have been the easy option. He chose the hard path. And when I think of tenacity, when I think of resilience, I see that big old fat white man in my head with his cigar in hand, right? That's what I see. And when I need my moments to feed on that, I'll go have what I call a Churchill day. I'll sit there and I'll smoke through 5 or 6 cigars. I'll sit there and have, my whiskeys and my champagne, and I'll read the books, and I'll sit in the bath, and I'll do those things that he was famous for. And I'll remember that, as bad as my life could get, I don't have to hold a whole country together against the worst thing that's ever happened in modern history, right? And so I respect tenacity beyond any trait, and that man is, like, in my mind, the physical embodiment of it.
Makes sense. It gives you perspective, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he was an asshole. Yeah, he was terrible. Yeah, he did bad things, right? And there's a lot I don't respect, but tenacity, I do.
This was amazing,
No, thank
Matt, and I'm sure people would have loved to understand. It's we sometimes get consumed into our struggles as immigrants, but sometimes we I have been known to say that, and I've said that many times, that people who are born here are born with a certain level of entitlement that they don't have to fight for. But there are struggles that are beyond just the bout, or just moving countries, and just there are struggles beyond that, and no one is immune to that, irrespective of where you are born. So thank you so much, Matt, for doing that, man. Yeah, this was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.